This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
This is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio. Today, would you believe it, I'm with Alan Cochrane and Gareth Richards.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Now, you can text the show on 81215, follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Frank on the Radio, or email the show via the Absolute Radio website. So, we're breaking all the current conventions of having three men running the show. I'll go so far as to say... Yeah, so
I don't know if this triumvirate has ever been a configuration of the show, has it?
I think it has.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, soon you forget.
Okay.
They're so fickle.
No, it's not that. I thought it'd just been different ones, interlocking.
No, I'm pretty certain we've done us three before.
Well, splendid.
But
I mean, I'm nearly a woman. I think
I suppose we all are if you consider the closeness of the... Is it XX?
Yeah, and XY.
Yeah, it's not far.
Yeah.
And if we had to, if one of us had to be the woman, I think I'd be the woman.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. I suppose if there was a nuclear attack, we're stuck in here like a bunker.
Yeah.
Good of you to offer early on. Because otherwise there's a lot of tension and debate, like a balloon debate. It's a sort of version of the balloon debate.
I've sort of volunteered early, haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. You've jumped, is what you have. Can I say, on the first track I played, which I'm not going to name because you might be listening to this on a Decade channel and it give you a nosebleed if it's not the track you heard, I played air guitar.
Did you?
Yeah, and I recently, because we're up in Edinburgh at perhaps the world's greatest arts festival, I've been doing lots of publicity and stuff, and I was on... with a band on a show. So, you do that thing, that awkward thing when people are sitting on the sofa being interviewed and then a band play and you react a bit more than you normally do in case the camera cuts to you and you don't want to look like you're not being involved. But I found myself playing air guitar then. And I don't know if people still do it. I think it's... I was looked at as if some sort of freak.
Really?
Yeah. I'm putting it down to the lack of belief in the unseen in society in general.
Interesting.
Has now come right down to the air
Yes.
guitar. Yeah, so I think if you have to believe to really play...
I don't think that's what it is, Frank, to be honest. I think it's more of a cultural thing. I saw a kid playing air bagpipes yesterday.
Oh, wow.
That's all about the instrument.
He just had an itchy armpit. So that was...
I asked Eric Clapton when I interviewed him if he played air guitar ever. And he said to me, well, why would they? I can play real guitar. And I thought, you don't
72
understand.
real guitars.
You don't understand.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's not it.
He just doesn't want to have to learn a new instrument.
Sometimes when I sit on the bus, and I'm not making this up, I very subtly, because you never know who's looking, steer the bus a little bit with my hands. Just, around... No,
You
I
play
can
air
drive.
bus?
I can drive. It's air driving,
Bus
basically.
driver.
But I just got like finger and thumb on the bottom of the steering wheel, just turning it gradually. Anyway, welcome, Gareth. We haven't been on haven't been on together for quite a while. I should say that Emily got poorly last minute, which is why we've ended up with a complete testosterone fest. A festosterone is what I'd call it if I had a festival that was all male things. Write that down with someone.
Yeah.
Not that I think I'd be allowed to stage such a festival. So, are you having a tremendous time in Edinburgh?
Yes, it's have you got a show on?
I have, yes. I've got.
You've not seen all the sold out signs across the lampposts?
Seen those, yeah.
Everywhere. Everywhere you are.
Have I ever felt less easy about who I am at core after making a phone call saying, I've just arrived in Edinburgh. I'm not sure the sold out banners on my posters are big enough. What's happened to me?
Frank Skinner on Absolute
Absolute Radio.
We've had a text from somebody whose wife does a version of air driving as a passenger, especially air braking.
Oh, yeah, well, I think we've all done a bit of that as a passenger. Oh, God. But not many people. I still occasionally do a bit of air choke in the car.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
On cold days.
Yeah.
Just think how many people listen to this and don't no idea what choke is.
Oh.
Used to be quite a delicate little judgment how far you pulled out the choke. Oh, don't flood it. Oh, man. I know nothing about cars now. There was a time a car could go past making a slightly high-pitched sound and I could go, oh, fan built. It's fan built. Oh, I can't do that now.
Those days are over.
I suppose we just have to accept that times change. So, look, I'm in Edinburgh, and one thing I do every time I come to Edinburgh for the festival is I visit some very good friends of mine. Ramadan and Valentine. No, not them. I visit the Lewis Chessmen.
Oh.
Now, you may remember I recently went to the British Museum to introduce my 7-year-old son to the Lewis Chessmen. And he said to me, I remember, how can you play chess with them when they're all the same colour? Something that had never occurred to me,
Yeah.
I have to say. But anyway, as I say, it's a bit like living with an avant-garde poet, my child. Do you remember I told you, this is a sidebar, but hold on to your hats. Do you remember I told you once that when he went into the questioning phase, my child, he said to me, what colour's the mirror?
Oh.
And I didn't sleep for about 3 nights.
Yeah.
A woman stopped me in the street since I've been here, stopped me about 3 or 4 days ago and said, I'm a philosophy student at Edinburgh University. Would you mind if I wrote a paper about your son's question about the mirror?
Wow.
Wow. Obviously, I get asked this regularly, and I said, no, I'd be happy with that. I mean, I'd like to read it.
Yeah.
She said, no, it's a really, really interesting question.
That is a good
And
question.
off she went.
You didn't say anything sarcastic like actual philosophy a bit thin on the ground at the moment, is it?
No,
love?
I didn't
you
say
just-
that. No. No, if we retold this story with you in the star role, it would have been philosophy.
Oh, I like philosophy. Big
We
fan.
all do.
I'm a big fan.
Absolute Radio's got a big philosophy following.
Yeah.
I'm going to go again, and I'll come back to. I'm still sticking with this Lewis Chessman, but this is my last. Oh, my strange child, strange stroke, fabulous child. Is that there's a thing in Edinburgh called Arthur's Seat, which you all know. Is it a mountain or a hill?
8, 12, 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is it?
I'd go mountain.
Yeah, it's big.
Big.
But it's always been said to me that it looks in profile like a lion couchant.
Oh.
What part of the line is the couchant?
It's the lying down bit.
Oh.
So rampant is when they're standing with their sort of
okay,
paws
yeah.
in the air, like heraldic, and couchant is when they're resting.
Right.
So it looks like that. So I was saying that to Buzz, my child, and he said, no, the front part there looks like a gorilla's head. And I'll tell you what, once you see that, I can only see the gorilla head now. 'Cause it's got that, you know those overhanging brows of the gorilla? It's got that.
Right.
But the gorilla's head just feels wrong, doesn't it, for a Scottish...
Yeah.
Also, I don't know when it was named Arthur's Seat, but people might not have known what gorillas were at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know how late their publicist was tardy.
I don't think lions were ever indigenous here either for the
No.
comparison point. But
That's an interesting point, because you see lots of lions in, like, you know, heraldic, when you see the jousting tournaments, if they pick up on the colours of the age. Never see gorillas. You don't get Richard the gorilla heart. No. And I'm sure gorillas are just as brave. You don't think so?
no, I think they probably are. I don't want to take on a gorilla.
No, which
Or
is,
lion, actually.
Which is, well, I know, as I've said to you before, I've always fancied my chances against the lion.
Because of a chair or something.
No, I just think if you grip them very tightly, they can't really get any of the sharp bits at you.
Oh.
Yeah. That's my theory. I mean, you got to hold on, don't let go. Once you took that grip, you got to keep it.
What's your exit strategy? That would be my question.
My exit strategy is to fall into not too deep a lake, so I could drown it beneath me. That's what I'm on at the moment. That's plan A.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
So, let me. So the Lewis Chessmen, in case you don't know, I've mentioned them on the show before. They were a chess. Well, actually, I now discover they weren't a chess set. They were just a whole big collection of loads of chess pieces. Some part of a set, some extras. Mm-hmm. A chess hoard.
Yes. And
they were found on the island of Lewis in a bag. I think that could be wrong, but anyway. Some of them are still on Lewis. Some of them are in the British Museum, and some of them are in Edinburgh at the National Museum of Scotland. You may remember the reason we talked about them recently is a bloke found one in a drawer.
Yeah, amazing.
They think they might get $1 million. I think it actually went to auction. They didn't get the $1 million. They got, but they got 700,000 plus.
Not bad.
I know,
thing
because
that's in a drawer.
Exactly. Well, that is a
Not
good
bad.
point.
I'll have to have a
Most
rummage.
expensive thing in a drawer, 8, 12, 15.
That would be a great texted, I think. Divorcees for wedding rings.
So I was in a rest. There'll be deeds. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, you reckon?
Do you still get deeds?
8, 12, 15. Do you still get deeds? And what's the most expensive thing you've got in a drawer? These are great textings, Frank.
No, I'll tell you why I ask about the deeds. Is that, like I've watched many westerns in my time. Mm-hmm. As a child, I watched a great many western films and TV shows. And there used to be a thing that if you had the deeds to a property, you owned it. So you could literally take the deeds out of someone's coat on the back of a chair, and then you own that property.
Brilliant.
Just holding the paper. I think in Laurel and Hardy's Way Out West, there's a lot of fighting over the deeds. Yeah. I don't think it's that simple now. You can't just take the papers.
There were simpler times.
Simpler times in many ways.
I tell you what would be a really valuable deed.
Go
on. From the Lewis Monopoly set.
Oh.
When they find the Lewis Monopoly set.
Yeah. That's
the deeds from that.
I don't know if they're still searching for that. Anyway, I was in a restaurant in Edinburgh called Spoons. Do you know it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Big soup specialists. And I was in there.
Upstairs, is it?
Upstairs, yeah.
I saw you in there.
We had a chat in a queue last year.
Yeah. Brief chat in a queue.
I didn't like the way you looked at me and said upstairs as if you were surprised. Surprised I'd gone for an upstairs.
I thought that's how you filtered out your restaurant choices.
That's how I burn off my calories pre-meal.
I didn't say upstairs.
They actually did have a stair lift. I noticed that because I made some remark to my mother-in-law about it. And we won't get into that. I had my family up this week, I should explain. But anyway... I was in there and a woman approached. I was with my partner, Kath, and Boz, my child, and Sandy Mason, who I don't know who she is, but she stays a lot. And this woman came over.
It's Kath's mum.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hold on. Let me write that down. I'll know that for next week. Anyway, I was a woman came over to the table and she said... you like the Lewis Chessmen, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, well, look, I curate them at the National Museum of Scotland.
Wow.
I said, well, every time I'm up here, I come in and I have a look. You know, I come to see them every time I'm in Scotland. And she said, well, come in while you're up here and I'll give you a bit of a closer look. Wow. I was excited.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
So
you were just getting a sort of a late night visit to the Lewis Chessmen offered.
Well, it was after hours.
It feels a bit like Hollyoaks when it's on late.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was so I trundled along to the I should say this woman was Dr. Alice Blackwell. who is curator of medieval archaeology and history at the museum.
Wow.
So I went along after hours, it's like 6 o'clock at night, through the staff entrance.
Brilliant.
And she's got like a flight case, opens it up, and you know when you get those foam thing, like shape, so you can put your, you know, like King Carlos the Jackal, I think, had one that he fitted all his rifle extension and everything in.
I've made one of those for my instrument.
Have you really?
Yeah.
You made one?
Yeah, because my old plastic case broke.
Yeah.
And so I bought a case, and then you can buy the foam stuff and then cut whatever you want out of it.
But if you cut it, do you get like a jagged edge on the foam?
If you're very careful.
Okay. What is it you play again?
The Q chord.
Yeah.
Suzuki Q chord.
Yeah. No one knows. I think there's only one in the world.
Is that right?
So anyway, she opened it up, and there was all the foam thing. There were the Lewis chessmen in their travel. Not they travel much.
Were they going somewhere?
No, they were just coming to see me backstage.
Oh, really?
So I had to put plastic gloves on. You know, is it plastic or rubber?
Rubber.
You know what I mean? The ones.
Yeah.
Put it this way, I sent Kath a picture of me holding the Lewis chessmen. She said, it's lovely, but you look like you've just taken them out of someone's body. That's a very terrible thing to say about the Lewis chessmen. So I got to handle and examine them closely. And I feel like I've known them my whole life.
Well, you do talk about them as if you know them.
Well,
Last week when we had a burrito, you said, I still got to go and see the Lewis chessmen, as if it was some friends of yours that you popped to in a pub.
Over a burrito, would you believe it?
Yes.
Well, I think it's partly because as a kid I was obsessed, as I've said before, with Nog in the Nog, which I then found the drawings were based on the Lewis chessmen.
Right.
But you might remember I went to see Nog in the Nog live, and they used my quote on their publicity, better than Hamilton. And it was completely sincere, can I say. So I was allowed to handle them, and you realise they're all totally individual. You know, even the two queens, they don't look the same. One's holding a horn aplenty, a drinking horn, and one just looks bored.
Hasn't one got a hand on the chin looking?
Well, they both got a hand on the chin, but one supports arm in the elbow supported in the other hand, and one's holding a drinking horn. I think it's like that one further on, bored, and then hit the mead early on. But I was in there with 45 minutes just looking at the Lewis chessmen, and the great thing was as well is I was with an expert. So I'm not with Michael Gove on the We've All Had Enough of Experts.
No.
So every thought that occurred to me, I just asked Dr. Alice, and she knew the answer. So I said, my son said, how do people play chess with them if they're the same colour? She said, there's done quite a lot of research on that, with blah, blah, and had all this. Seems that they did have a collar on them. And
some of them were red, weren't they? And it's washed off.
They're quite heavy as well.
Right.
I wanted to ask you something about this as a technical question. Well, no, you might know, Gareth, but I'm thinking it's a question about muscles. So I'm thinking Alun, as you're out today's nearly lady.
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
You were having your late night session with the Lewis chessmen.
Yes.
Not a bit of gossip. It's just for people who can't picture it. You know that scene in Alan Partridge where he goes around a hi-fi store after hours because he's so famous that he would get annoyed?
Oh, yeah.
You're like that, but with antiquities. Is that right?
Well, as you remember, when we had Tim Key on the show, he was promoting the last Alan Partridge series, which he was in. He turned to me at one point and said, "Have you seen it?" And I said, "No." And it was all a bit #orcs.
It was.
Oh, really?
But anyway, I was. They're quite. The great thing about holding them, the Lewis chessmen, is they're quite heavy. They're heavier than my replica set.
Oh, right.
And it made me think that they are being moved about by people with sword arms. Do you know what I mean? More muscular forearms from doing a lot of sword work.
Oh,
what do you think of this as a theory?
Back in the day?
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never thought of chess as a workout before.
No, me neither.
I guess if the men are heavy enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bad that we still call them chessmen because there are obviously queens.
Chess people.
But still, chess people.
Chess
Yeah.
sets.
But I remember now, I was reading an essay by David Foster Wallace about tennis.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And he said if you look at professional tennis players, they have one arm,
They do.
their racket arm is much more developed than the other. Is that true, Al? I knew you'd know.
That is true, and I don't like to name drop, but I once had a chat about it with Greg Rosetsky.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
The tennis player.
No, it's a bloke that lives near me. It's just a coincidence of this. Yeah, so they have to do they do as much as they can to counterbalance it, but it's not, it's never going to be enough, I don't think.
You see, I've never picked up on it, but now I really want to get close to a tennis player so I can can spot it.
We all do.
Well,
Yeah.
just get in touch with Wimbledon and see if they'll arrange an after-hours showing for you.
Yeah, do it like a lineup where you can go along and squeeze the bicep.
I'm hoping to turn up
Several
with some
tennis players.
measuring calipers. Just a hot armhole thing. Presumably, one way of spotting is the sleeve would be slightly tighter on one side of it. No, but this brings me. See, when you hold the Lewis Chessman, as I have. Then you see.
Don't have to go on about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, haven't we all?
You see
Oh, no, we haven't.
You see details that you don't normally see. Like
Right.
on the back of the Queen's seat is a little dragon head, as if it was in the chair. And have you ever had this thing when you meet you get close to something that normally you see from? Look, for example, when I went to Sydney, I went to have a real close up look at the Opera House. So I was walking around it, and there was like tiles fallen off it. You know how immaculate it looks on the pictures?
Mm-hmm.
As I once told you, I made one out of a tiny one out of my nail clippings. But yeah, when you got close to it, there was like holes in the roof, and they just slipped off, and they were lying there, these iconic white things. No one had put them back on.
Oh.
So what about this for a texting? When you've got close to anything or anyone, I'll just think of an example of this now, of meeting someone well known and being stunned, but I'll tell you that after the
Yeah, I've
news.
thought of one as well.
I'm living one right now.
Oh, there you go. If you, I told you I should have worn my trousers. So, if you've got close to anything or anyone and noticed a surprising detail, let us know on 81215.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
This is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio with Alan Cochrane, and Gareth Richards is with us this morning. You can text the show on 81215, follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Frank on the Radio, or email the show via the Absolute Radio website. Now, last week, our regular readers will know that Emily told a story of going to see Gareth Richards' gig, which she loved, can I point out?
She did.
It's on at 2:45 at...
Whistlebinkies.
There you go.
On Nidri Street.
There you go. And but she had a situation. Now, just in brief, in summary, she put a tenner, was it, in the bucket? She'd explain at the Free Fringe that you don't buy the ticket up front. You watch the show and then a bucket goes round.
Yeah.
And you pay how much you've enjoyed the show is what you pay. So she put a tenner in, and then she realised she'd dropped £20 note, which someone working there thought had fell out the bucket, so they picked it up and put it in the bucket. So then Emily was in this situation. She didn't want to take it out the bucket because she didn't want to look like she was stealing.
Yeah.
Now,
even worse, thought that she was putting in 10 and taking out 20 like she was due a refund on the calibre of the show. That was one of her concerns as well.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if any people watch shows and then take money out of the bucket.
I mean, I've seen a few shows this week that I think owe me money now, but that's just a...
Well, some people assume you're passing the bucket round for vomit after the show for reviews.
So I thought, as you're here, Gareth, were you aware of this incident?
Well, since it's happened, one lady said, "Here's some money, but not as much as Emily Dean put in." So people have mentioned it along the way.
That's good.
Well, there's a lot going on after the show because obviously I've got to like hold the bucket, and I think
autographs, selfies.
Someone did on the first show. A guy called George came, who was a big fan of this show, came to see the show.
Okay,
said he wanted a
completist
picture with me. Completist, yeah, definitely.
But it's we should explain that what happens normally in the Free Fringe is that people do what is known as the bucket speech.
That's right, yeah.
At the end, where what.
Well, I think
in summary, what's your bucket?
The classic
speech?
thing is it's the Free Fringe. It means it's free to get in. It's not free to get out.
Okay.
It means you have to go. So but whatever you feel the show has been worth to you, please fold that amount and put it in the bucket. I think that's a nice way to do it.
Like the street
no
performance.
pressure. Yeah. And so that's what I do. But I also, this year, I've got a card reader. But,
wow.
Yeah.
The Free Fringe is it's already becoming corrupted.
It's quite slick.
Yeah. But, I'm in a well, like all the venues, made of stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With almost no phone signal. It has to be connected to your phone, the card reader. So,
I see.
It hasn't yet paid for itself, the amount of times I've got it to work.
It's always nice to have a card reader, though, with you.
Your show's got a tarot, haven't you? You've got a tarot with you.
I've got a tarot one, yeah. But it's that does work underground.
Yes.
Better. Exactly.
And while this was all happening, I was trying to get someone that said, "Have you got a card reader?" Yeah. That's how they try and get out of it.
Did they actually say?
Yeah,
that's I wouldn't have known. You notice I'm using the phrase card reader now quite casually. I never heard it until 8 seconds ago. Oh, you got a card reader, okay.
Do you know what it means, though?
I know what it means.
Yeah.
I can guess what it means, but...
so I was so someone did that, so I was trying to get it to work. Meanwhile, the person in the venue after me, who's a comedian called Maureen Younger... ironically, because she's older than me.
That's weird. This leads me to another one of Bozzy's quotes. He said to me, "How come the word big is smaller than the word small?" It's a good point.
Oh, that's one philosopher.
I look forward to reading the philosophy essay on that.
Exactly. So carry on.
So Maureen comes over to me and she says, "You know, a woman's got your bucket."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I knew, well, I thought it was probably Emily.
Right.
It's the first time she's ever touched a bucket in her life. She probably wondered what it was.
Well, then I went back and she had it clutched to her. Oh. She had her arms round it. And I thought, we know Emily. She likes to be close to money.
Yeah. But did she... what happened? Did she left it in there? So she put 30 quid in.
If it goes in the bucket, it stays there.
That's the rule.
I'm the only one who can take it out.
What happens in the bucket stays in the bucket. Well, it was. I'm sure it was worth every penny.
It was. I did actually. I bought everyone a drink with Emma. Drinks were on Emily that evening.
Oh well, that's lovely. I'm sure she'll be pleased to hear that.
She can afford it, can't she?
She has a fierce temperance stance now, but never mind.
Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio.
Now, Faye, who is our assistant producer, arrived with a story. Was it Gordon who told you this?
Yeah.
Gordon, who works here at Fourth Radio, said that one of his friends got a folded 2p piece in their bucket, having dropped the folded hint.
Right. I discourage that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Well,
that sounds like it's taken a lot of prep as well.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, if it's taken a lot of prep, it's unpleasant that someone's gone to that trouble to drop. And also they've made a decision about the money they're going to put in. Yeah. They could be jokers who've also put in a note. But if it's someone who has folded it on the spot, you don't really want to quibble with them.
No.
I don't want to argue with that bloke. Or indeed woman. Yes, of course.
Everyone knows performers. On the way in, the taxi driver said to me, I said, "Do you go and see any Edinburgh shows?" And he says, "Almost never." Almost never. I've only been, in the last 10 years, I'd say I'd been to 4 shows, and my son's a stand-up comedian.
Wow.
Yeah, and his son, he said his son is called Gareth War,
Right.
who I've gigged with, or I've met at a gig.
Right.
He's another Gareth. He's like, there's very few comedy Gareths.
The lesser spotted Gareth.
So,
yeah.
that's extraordinary.
It is.
He drove me here
if
today.
If only Arthur C. Clarke was still alive, he might have featured that on The Strange World of Arthur C. Clarke. I was watching a street performer, Australian woman, and she gave the bucket speech, and she began by saying, if you saw this show in a theatre, you'd pay £50 to see. And I thought, no, I really wouldn't. That isn't true. There's nothing about that.
I wouldn't go.
I wouldn't go and see it because But also, and then she said, one of the things she said would down insult me with coins, which I thought was just too much. And I'll tell you what, I didn't like about it is that there was bits when she was talking, and there'd be a cheer from street performers that were adjacent. They were the other side of this wall.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And they were a sort of breakdancing a bunch of young men.
Crew.
Yeah, it would be a crew. And it was like, in the early stages of the World Snooker Championships when you get applause coming through from the other table.
Don't like that.
No,
I always
well,
feel like it must be off-putting.
They seem to cope all right with it.
They
And
do.
of course, you did get the great moment of a big Bill Werbeniuk putting his head round the corner of the screen to watch a 147. Anyway, every time they got a cheer or applause, the breakdown, the crew next to it,
B-boys, probably.
this woman would say things like, and look, for at one point she said, "Oh yeah. Well, if you want me to just dance, if I can dance for you. That's and I'm doing something special. If people are going to applaud people just dancing." And then at the end, she said, like, I did a big support street entertainers, and she'd been horrible. She'd been really horrible about the other ones, hoity-toity in the extreme.
What was she doing?
She was, perhaps I shouldn't identify her,
right.
but then again, perhaps I should.
Juggling?
She was sort of contortionist type person. I thought she was talking out of it. Anyway, it turned out they were just very close to. No, she was, it put me off, so I sent my child over with £1 piece to put in the bucket.
Folded up.
Yeah, she didn't send it back, so she was folded up.
Frank Skinner on
Absolute Radio.
We've got various text-ins running.
Yes.
Some are odder than others.
Well, true of everything.
Yes. We were asking if you've ever been up close to a person or a thing and found it surprising.
Yeah, notice surprising details.
Yeah, I have one of those. But first, we've had an email from Warren. Hi, Frank. I visited the Pompidou Centre about 20 years ago, and I was so disappointed. What a discoloured, neglected rust bucket. Nothing like the pictures.
Oh, well, of course, one of the features of the Pompidou Centre is an art gallery in Paris. And one of the features of it, and I think they might have been amongst the first to do this, is that all the heating system and all that is all visible. It's not hidden away. So they prided themselves, as you consider, innards, as it were. When I went there used to be a man, I don't want to use I was going to say I don't want to use the fat word. It doesn't really work if you say the fat word. Anyway, it's a big bloke, and he had a very big belly. And what he did was people paid to throw darts at his belly. He stood outside. He was a street performer.
Right.
So he just held his hand in front of his face so they didn't go in his eyes.
Yeah.
And then you had to dip them in some sort of cleansing fluid. And then people stood. And the idea was to get them to stick in. So people were really like taking their arm right back and giving them maximum shock.
And they were just sticking his guts.
And they were just stuck in his belly. Yeah, that was the street act. I've never seen it done before or since. I wonder if he's still there.
Yeah, I wonder if he slags off other street acts whilst he's played next to... Yeah, they're only dancing. I could do that.
He's probably immensely respectful.
You know how people say that nowadays health and safety has gone too far?
Yeah.
I disagree.
Yeah, well, he was only
Case in
endangering.
point.
I mean, no one was standing behind him, obviously. That would have been foolish indeed. And when they stuck in an unsatisfactory ways. They sort of hung down. They were in the flesh, but hanging down flat. I wanted them to be sticking upright, you know. Anyway, that's him.
Well, I once met the ex-England Prime Minister John Major.
I think he was the Great Britain Prime
Yeah,
Minister.
you know what I mean. Same difference in it.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
8, 12, 15.
And I was surprised to find that he's enormous. Like, he's a really big bloke with massive hands. Like, his hands felt like they could hide a cricket ball quite easily.
I think he comes from juggling stock.
Oh, maybe
doesn't
that's
he?
it.
I think he did know. I think his
This
parents...
show's got a very street performer theme
Yeah,
today.
his parents
you're right,
were musical
Yeah.
people, weren't they? So,
But I don't think that genetically creates huge hands. But he
well, I think
certainly had
luckily
big
we
hands.
have Richard Dawkins on the line to discuss this.
At the other extreme, Sarah. It says Sarah Bown, which I assume it could be Sarah Brown, but it could be Sarah Bown.
Could be Sarah Bown. Anything's possible.
I just started work at a certain broadcast company after graduating.
Maybe she's trampolining as she texted in. Sarah Bown. Sorry.
Says was on a training course and popped to the loo. As I walked back to the training room, I passed Moira Stewart
Oh, yeah.
and was just overwhelmed at how tiny she was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is she? Oh, I've met Moira Stewart. I didn't notice that, I must say. I think that she was carrying an enormous magnifying glass before her.
All right.
I met, the first time I met John Motson, football commentator, legend. I don't know about you guys, and this is now as it's a men's show today, as it's a men's show. I find one of the trickiest shaving things is that bit just under the septum.
Yes.
That bit that separates the nostrils. There's a bit that grows there like a tuft, and you really have to get. I have to.
Yeah.
John Motson hadn't bothered with that. He'd just let that bit. It's very unusual. You know those jazz beards that are underneath the bottom lip that you see like on Tom Waits and stuff? He sort of had a version of that. As if...
under the nose.
Yeah, as if he had a very small old sofa on his upper lip that was sprouting its stuff. Yeah, and he'd looked like he hadn't touched it for, years. It was a really quite a...
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was upsetting and disturbing in equal measure.
Frank Skinner,
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
One of the other conversations that we began earlier, I'm just trying to find the text message. Oh, here we go. We were discussing Arthur's Seat and whether it looked like a lion
Or a gorilla.
or a gorilla, and then you discussed hill or mountain. I think we even said 8, 12, 15 is Arthur's Seat,
yeah.
hill or mountain. And now for the science bit. I believe Arthur's Seat is a basalt plug which filled the hole in a volcano whose cone has since eroded away. 495, who adds in brackets, "This is my girlfriend's phone."
Yeah.
Don't know why they felt the need to...
Well, because it's actually 987, but he said he's 495 because he's using his
I
girlfriend's phone.
see, you're right. Thank you.
That's interesting because that
Yes, it does
suggests
explain it.
he's one of those people, those organised people who know their own phone number,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
which I don't.
Oh, really?
People say to me,
How'd you phone yourself?
I don't. Do people phone themselves?
No. Well, if you lost your phone, that's why you phone yourself.
Yes,
that's
good
when
point.
that's when loneliness has gone out of hand. When you start phoning yourself. What happened if you texted yourself? Would it send?
Yes, I've done that.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes you can text yourself just to sort of remind yourself something, so it's at the top end of your text messages.
Or just encouraging things.
Yeah.
You're doing great, mate. Keep going.
I lived with
Every day in every way. You are getting better and better.
Don't listen to them.
I lived with a woman who
reading them.
used to do that. She used to put signs up that said things you are a very special person and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
When I say lived with, we were in bed sits. I wouldn't live with anybody who did that. I made some joke about had she been opening my mail when there was a thing on the wall that said you are an amazing, blah blah, and she took exception.
Somebody's asking.
Chased me out of the bed sit.
Oh, really?
With a kitchen implement.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Depending on which implement, it varies in fear factor.
Well, it was quite fear factory. I don't want to
okay.
go into details, but I was quite afraid. Obviously, she didn't know what I was to become, or it probably wouldn't have happened.
I mean,
Can I say that part of this? Oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say 100 has texted. Do you think Motti's septum surfer was to stop microphone rub? Maybe it had a practical use.
Maybe it was a Velcro kind of. If you put a bit of Velcro on top of his lip, Mike,
hands-free.
Hands-free, yeah. Then he could be consulting his, the Rothman yearbook as he commentated. Yeah, I think you've hit on something there, which is good. Another problem solved here on Absolute Radio.
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
Absolute Radio.
337 has texted, morning, Fralgar. I guess that's Frank, Alun, Gareth.
I quite like it.
I have seen the Morse chessmen, which predate Frank's favourites by quite a bit.
Do they?
But they're not as interesting.
Well, I don't know the Morse chessmen. Are they set in Oxford?
That's right, yeah. Or this is a coded message.
Oh, loving it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they're older, but just less
How do you
interesting.
spell it? Do you spell it as in Morse?
Well, they've spelled it Morse.
Okay.
Person, but that could just be
Is it Norse?
No,
that
Norse.
rings a bell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Norse chessmen.
Yeah, I think the Lewis chessmen are Norse chessmen.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should. One of the reasons we're up here is to see shows and tell you if you're coming to the festival what to see. Can I tell you? Yesterday.
All your troubles seem so far away.
Well, they didn't really.
No.
But they were in the usual position, arm's reach. I went to see at. Let me get this right. On Underbelly in Bristow Square, I went to see Manual Cinema's Frankenstein.
Oh.
Are you familiar with Manual Cinema?
No, but my wife was looking at that show and thinking she would like to go and see it.
Well, let me tell you something about Manual Cinema. He's not that Spanish bloke that lives at number 84.
Oh.
No. He, at Manual Cinema, so you walk in, it's at the McEwen Hall, which is a pretty incredible place, and it's a massive room.
Yes.
And you walk in, and on stage, there's like musicians and screens, and there's all these metal things hanging up. Look, when I say metal things, I mean just pieces of scrap metal suspended for percussive reasons. And there's a line of... I think it's either 3 or 4 OHPs.
Overhead projectors.
Overhead projectors.
I thought you said OAPs for a minute.
No,
I don't want to sit near them.
No.
The stench.
Yeah, they do the steam effect at the end. So there's a screen in the middle, and what they do is they make a film. So it all goes on the screen, but you can watch it all happening around you. And they use there's singers and actors and puppets and silhouette work.
Are you describing a play?
No, there is an element.
There's all sort of
element. It all goes on the screen, but you can watch it happening. I got to tell you now, it's brilliant. It's the story of Frankenstein, and you watching it being made on the stage. If you're in Edinburgh, go and see Manual Cinema's Frankenstein. It's a real sort of. I'll tell people about this for years to come.
Age range would it be suitable for?
Well, I think, obviously it's Frankenstein, so
Right.
there's a bit of scariness in it, but they don't.
It's not a big spoiler alert that there's a monster in there.
Yeah, there's a monster, but there's no entrails.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to give any spoilers. There's one limb severance.
That's all right.
But it's done in shadow. Like a lot of it is done in silhouette stuff.
Right.
I've
seen a couple of shows that cost an arm and a leg, so there's 2 limbs severed there.
Well, there you go. Well, I suggest you make a bolt for this show. It's really. I got corrected about. I talked about the bolts in Shakespeare's neck. And
Frankenstein.
A friend of mine who's a very practical scientific man said they're actually electrodes.
Oh.
Okay, well, bolts just sounds better. But honestly, go and see Manual Cinema's Frankenstein. It's special.
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
This is Frank Skinner on Absolute Radio with Alan Cochrane and Gareth Richards. You can text the show on 81215, follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Frank on the Radio, or email the show via the Absolute Radio website. So, Gareth, thank you so much for coming in today.
Pleasure.
You're not going, but I'm just...
No.
I didn't actually do that bit. Called at last minute.
Yeah, sorry, Emily's not well.
No.
Get well soon, Emily.
Yeah.
True. And so how's you've been up here since the beginning of the festival, how's it?
Yeah, it's been good. I been going to see a few shows, little bits of shows. I got some tickets to Eddie Izzard.
Oh,
Did you?
Yeah.
He was doing work in progress up here, is
Yeah,
that right?
or like sort of a preview of his tour, I think. He said
Okay.
it's a little bit of his tour Wunderbar.
Okay.
Right.
It was very good.
Oh, yeah.
Was it
is,
Wunderbar?
Is it about Charles Dickens, or have I got mixed
No,
up?
I think he's doing something else about Charles Dickens.
Maybe
Someone
that
mentioned
was-
he's doing something about Charles Dickens.
Yes.
Right.
I was... Yeah, that's confused. So he's doing 2 shows?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, but it was very interesting as a performer as well, because there was an interruption.
Oh, was there?
Which,
Heckler?
someone, because the rooms get very hot up here, don't they?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so someone took ill on the front row,
Oh.
and I think they're fine
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
because the show eventually carried on.
Yeah.
The show must go on. That's a rule in show
I don't know.
business.
Not if someone... I think...
Yeah,
Someone
This-
passes
I
out.
think-
Yeah.
think-
What if they pass away?
Well, I heard someone tell the story
Oh, yeah.
that someone in a play had passed away,
Oh, yeah.
but the wife said, "But I want to see what happens at the end of the show."
Yeah, that was Abraham Lincoln. I did a TV show once where we thought a man had died in the audience.
Oh, wow.
And the BBC person was there, the commissioning editor, and he came over and said, "We'll have to cancel the record if he's
Right.
died."
Mm.
And someone came over and said, "He hasn't died. He's very ill, but he hasn't died." And we get there's an ambulance. He said, "Okay, we'll carry on there."
Right.
So it's a very fine line.
Show must go on.
Yeah,
Except,
but I mean, you got to have a bit of respect. But this was a fainting.
Yes,
was
I think it was a
Yes.
fainting type thing, and so the show was stopped, and they said, "Any doctors here?" I mean, there were about 9 doctors.
Were there?
There were loads of doctors.
They love the arts.
They had to get
They love his art.
Yes, they do.
They had to
Yeah.
get the doctors to back off a bit because
Yeah.
there were too many.
Can
of
we
them.
have fewer doctors in here?
He gets the Labour voters, doesn't he?
He
so
does.
that bit of young doctors strike. It all makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. He talked about a bunch of things. Things Eddie Izzard talks about now:
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Europe?
running marathons, Europe,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
running marathons,
Yeah.
talking other languages.
The beret?
Didn't mention he wasn't wearing
I
the
mentioned
beret.
the
Has he
Beret.
Didn't have
abandoned the beret?
He didn't have the beret. He's got a
Sans-
particular.
Sans beret, as he
Beret
would put
look.
it, I'm sure, if he was here. Well, I'm glad he's still rocking.
But this was the thing, Frank. Right? he talked about atheism, because he's an atheist.
All right.
And he was saying how...
Of course he is.
All the things that have... he's mentioned it. All the things that have happened in history, and God's never turned up.
Right.
He's never done anything to intervene.
Uh-huh.
Never shown up.
You doing his bit?
At which point...
You don't do his bit.
Someone in the front row passes out.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And the show stops.
At that point, oh man, he must have thought that the lightning bolt had just gone slightly to the left.
Just missed him. And
God's
I was
aim's 8 feet out.
I was millimetres from saying, "And thus saith the Lord, you who speak against me, I will smite ye."
The thing was that it hit a middle-aged woman in a pink beret.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.
I had my family up.
Nice.
I'll start that again because we won't be able to do the Eddie.
Oh, yeah.
I had my family up this week. Yeah, it was nice. I had my partner and my 7-year-old and my mother-in-law. So I covered all the bases. I had to try to find shows with a range of 70 years across them.
Yeah, difficult.
But I'll tell you something. I saw... are you familiar with the Listies?
The Listies?
Listies. The Australian double act that do kids show. They're at the Pleasance Courtyard. Can I tell you, without doubt, the funniest kid show I have ever seen.
Wow. Really?
I mean, and when I say kid show, I really, really laughed. I'd have been happy to have gone on my own and still would have laughed. It's just funny. Buzz described it after when he was he didn't know the names of these guys, so he said, the less silly one was how he described the sort of straight man type guy. But we bought the book, we got the CD,
you got all the merch.
Oh, we went merch. It was brilliant. If you're up here with a kid, or even not, I would say go and see the Listies. I mean, it was...
I'll definitely go to that.
And there's a bit of, there's a bit of the thing, a bit of poo and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? I love that.
Brilliant.
Just on a slightly frugal sounding note, Frank Skinner, was it jam packed? Because I've got a Pleasance pass, and I'll buy tickets to see them. If
I don't think
it
was sold out when I was there. But I'll tell you something. Another thing about the list is they've gone very reasonable on the prices.
Oh, good for them.
So yeah, exactly, good for them. Not like some. While we're on
what
it,
the dickens are you talking about?
Just on the kids front, the 360-degree All-Stars.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Oh man,
seen them before.
Go and see them.
Yeah,
and they you got breakdancing and
beatbox.
Yeah, BMX, basketball,
all that stuff. It's great,
top end. And I'm just going to do this quick, because I know this is, I'm not Mark Commode, although, as I always say, I've marked a few commodes in my time. SK Shlomo, who is a...
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Beatboxer.
One of those, yeah, exactly. And I always send with beatboxing. He does a beatboxing kids show. He does an adult show as well, but I went to the kids show, which is great, because Boz has really took to it now. He can't stop beatboxing.
Oh, I was going to recommend a beatbox show as well. That's also for kids. Jared Christmas and Hobbit, which is great.
It's a good thing for them, I think. Get the old mouth working.
Yeah. And
also, I find with beatboxing, in the idea of beatboxing, I think, beatboxing. When you're there and it's happening, you think, this man must be in league with the devil to make these sounds. And he was lovely. He's one of those blokes. There are certain people, kids entertainers, and I'm not going to name them. I don't want to burst anyone's bubble. But they get people on stage, get kids on stage, and they aren't quite as kid-friendly.
Yeah.
Just a little bit irritable with them. Yeah. Which is one thing with your own kids, but not with others.
Yes.
But Shlomo, he's nice. He's got nice.
Although one of my favourite things at Edinburgh Fringe is seeing kids on stage on the brink of tears by a kids entertainer who's not quite
one other show
Careful
on
enough.
this link. Mark Thompson, who does the science.
People rave about that too.
Kids in tears, but mainly because of the ammonia-based experiment. I'll tell you what, he was making things explode, and there was actually kids just going, again. That's what they want. They want smoke and explosions.
Frank Skinner on
Absolute Radio.
I have a excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. But I have an etiquette-based question for two fellow stand-ups, if I may be so bold.
Can I stop you there? Just a small footnote. My
Yes.
dad insisted throughout his life that that should be pronounced etiquette, not etiquette. He would not give it. He always said etiquette. Yeah. Sorry,
and
carry
not
on.
in a sort of a comedy.
No,
getting it
not
wrong
in a
way.
comedy way. Like he always said,
excellent.
it was Somerset Matham, not Somerset Maugham.
I've been going to see shows, and I came to see Frank Skinner's fantastic stand-up show the other day.
Hurrah.
Here's my question: if you guys were going to see somebody that you knew do a stand-up show, after it, would you do the go behind and have a chat, or if you were rushing off for another show, would you just leave it completely, or would you send a text or a little message saying,
I'm edgy about going back.
"Are you?" In case you start correcting people's jokes, basically.
Well, I have got that. Not correcting, but I
Improving.
I offer suggestions, which is a bad habit of mine. I also went backstage once to impromptu at a popular magician's show I'd been to. And I went backstage, and two of the volunteers from the audience were sitting in the dressing room. And I felt like I'd caught them with their pants down, so to speak, not literally. But I think I'd text after.
I personally, when I've been going to see comedians, even that don't know that I'm going to their show, afterwards, in case they've seen me in the light or anything, they think, oh yeah, Alan was in my show. I would send a message, I enjoyed your show, I'll see you about, let's have a cup of tea, just in case they think, oh, he's seen it and hated it.
I can't remember if you came back to my show or I just bumped into you after.
I actually walked home with you, didn't I? I saw you in the street.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, didn't we just bump into each other though?
Yeah, I saw you on the other side as I was walking back.
All right,
so,
there you go.
But another comedian and another comedian were at the door of my show last Saturday.
Two other comedians.
So two other comedians, one of whom I know I would consider a mate, and I'm certain has got my phone number. And they watched my show. I heard one of them laughing, like specifically, nothing. Not a pop back, oh, I really enjoyed it, and not a text message. Absolutely zero.
Right.
Now,
There's only one way to interpret that.
you think so?
Well,
Because I've
Disgust.
been wondering, am I
Absolute disgust.
am I paranoid, or am I a bit mad?
I'm not. It might be paranoia, but it's paranoia I share.
Oh, okay, good.
Talking to the wrong people.
I mean, almost as supporting evidence, my wife and I were in a park the other day, and a comedian, not one of the ones that I just discussed, walked past, and I said to my wife, oh yeah, he's an odd fish. And my wife said, "Kuh, you all are." So,
Yeah, well, I think lots of partners of comedians share that.
so I don't want to be a sort of cliched paranoid comic, but at the same
go
time, well, I've spent the whole of the last week being one, so am I to assume that they just didn't like my
Well, I
offering
always
and
think that
didn't-
because it's a lovely, when you see something good, it's lovely to be able to tell the person.
Yeah.
I mean, I will lie, certainly.
Yeah.
But
It's the proper thing to do, can I say?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. I told you once I went to see a friend in a play, and he emailed me before. He said, "I'll see you after the play. Don't forget to say I was brilliant." And I went back and I saw him and I said, "Oh, you were brilliant." And he said, "Oh, thanks very much." And there was never any reference to the fact that he set that up. And I think that's just the best way. Brilliant is a really good word. I passed someone in the street yesterday who said, I really liked your show the other night. And I thought, liked.
Really liked.
I'd rather you just keep your mouth shut. If
Pretend you haven't seen it.
If that's all you've got, just stay out of it.
Frank Skinner.
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
It hasn't all been mind-crushing paranoia from me about my friends who are comedians watching the show and then not even texting or waiting and saying that they'd seen it and liked it.
Can I jump in on that? Someone came to see me in London recently, a friend, and they didn't come back or text. Don't get me wrong, I love it when they don't come back. I don't like to break my stride from stage to bus stop when I'm gigging in London. But what they did was I got a card about 3 days later. I really enjoyed. So they'd held back for the lovely touch.
That is
so
nice. Yeah,
keep an eye on the letterbox.
Well, I think this person's gone for second class mail. It's been a week.
And maybe a with sympathy card.
Yeah. It was a good one. I mean, God, some of the midweek ones this run.
Oh, no,
anyway,
don't start that. You keep saying that, and then people keep telling me it's good.
Good.
Sorry, did I say good? I meant brilliant.
I had a fun chat yesterday with my little girl who's 8, and we were walking around, and she's seeing all the posters, and people have got stars stuck all over their posters, and she's trying to figure out at 8 years old what they all mean.
Yeah.
And she said, "How many stars does your show have, Daddy?" And I said, I don't know. I don't really read my press, which is too young to understand that as a concept. I said, I know that there was a review this week that had 4, but other than that, I don't know. And she went, okay, well, I give your show 5 stars. So I've got a 5-star review.
And she hasn't seen it.
She hasn't seen it, but I don't think that should
she'll
discount
be very good at going back when she gets older. Why even no need to see the show? She could just turn up at the dressing room.
I don't think that makes her review worthless, Frank.
No.
The fact that she hasn't seen it.
I would hold on to it with both hands.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get that many 5 stars up here.
And also, I'm confident that, unlike some of the actual people that have seen my show, she's not misrepresenting it in any way. Like, she's not misquoting jokes or doing that sort of stuff that people do in reviews, don't they?
One of my I'm not going to call this a pet hate, I'm going to call it a hate, is that thing they do in Edinburgh of joke of the festival.
Oh, yeah.
When they take, when someone who's never ever made a joke in their life writes a whole column full of jokes that belong to other people, thinking like he's doing them a favour.
Yeah.
Keep your nose out of it. And if you don't make comedy, don't do comedy. Would be my suggestion.
Excellent.
If one of my jokes appears in one of theirs, they're going to get the biggest legal shock they've ever had in their life.
Let us know how that goes.
I think it's a disgrace. It wouldn't be. And also, the comedians are meant to feel like they've been done an enormous honour by their stuff has been put in there.
I did have arguably a bad review. I was walking home last night, and there was a police car, and I've developed a weird habit of looking into police cars because I know some police officers in Manchester, so I always think that I'm going to see them in the wild. And so I looked in, forgetting that I'm not in Manchester, and I looked in the back of the car, and there was a guy in civilian clothes, but I thought if it was like a criminal, they'd be in the middle of 2 cops in case they tried to get out. But he was in the back, and he looked up and went, "Ah!" and started shaking his fist in an angry way at me.
Wow.
And I thought, I think he's like been captured, but he's not surrounded by... It was as if he was locked in the back like a child, but he was really angry at me.
Yeah. You haven't had one of these comedians arrested for shabby comedy etiquette. That's brilliant, though. I like the angry man in the back of the police car.
Frank Skinner.
Absolute Radio.
Absolute Radio.
We were discussing earlier that you had only just realised that tennis players end up with one overdeveloped arm.
Yes.
546 has texted, "Good morning all. Most lorry drivers have one arm browner than the other. When I was a trucker, I drove a left-hand drive Volvo for a month. After that, I was an undercover trucker." Do I get that? I don't know if I understand that last bit.
Undercover trucker.
Oh, I
Is
guess
that like me on the bus pretending I'm steering?
No, I think they mean that they evened the tanning, so they were a surprise trucker because it was an even tan, whereas most truckers have got one arm out of the window.
Oh, I see.
But interesting to me, the first part, that if you're a truck driver, you've got one arm browner than the other.
Well, do people... we used to do a thing as youths, is if a big truck went past, we used to mime pulling there was like a string thing they pulled to send the horn. We used to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they would actually sound the horn for us. It was like, we made our own entertainment. There was no internet. But do they still operate like that, those horns? They probably don't, do they? Probably computer. They probably got a chip in their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had an email from a mate this week that said, well, there's no greater accolade than to be sung about by Basil Brush. And I thought, what? And apparently he was on... Radio 4 this week, doing bits from his Edinburgh show, including, I think it was a rhyme of Skinner and Winner. And so my friend is a poet, and he commented on the rhyme scheme. I'll see if I can. You just talk amongst yourselves. It's quite a technical point that he made.
I mean, I'm just gutted that you're being texted about being mentioned on Radio 4, and I'm still awaiting a text from the comics that saw me last Saturday night. That seems like salt in the wound.
That is.
Have you been mentioned in poetry, Gareth?
No, but do you know it's my last day of being 39 today.
What, you're 40
tomorrow?
Oh,
wow. My 40th birthday.
My goodness me. Happy birthday. Are you still doing a show tomorrow?
Consolation, yes. 40 Years in the Wilderness, my show is called.
Well, I might come tomorrow and just put a cupcake in the bucket. Obviously, I'll eat it first. Yes, he says. He said Basil Brush sang a song, and it says this is my mate Kelvin, who is a published poet. Of some note, and it says something like, "The one to see after dinner is The Winner" by Frank Skinner, and then he says an insistent rhyme scheme, certainly. So that's nice.
That's a great review.
So a few weeks ago, you won't know this, Gareth, but we talked about the fact that Barbra Streisand has cloned her dogs and now has the clones. The dogs have passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if they retained the memories of the original animals because they've been cloned.
Right.
And Basil Brush I worked with a few times in the 90s, but the man who operated then, as he has passed, the operator, Tomb. And
Yikes.
and I think that was the headline. And I wonder if Basil still has that memory, even though he has a different operator, of us working together, and that's why he's singing about me. What about that?
Clear he still feels fondly about you.
Yes.
It's another of Frank's philosophy questions.
It is. It's a big one, isn't it? Do cloned animals retain their memory, and do newly operated puppets remember the people they've worked with?
Quite an existential tilt to today's show.
Yeah,
times,
there was, and what a great way. So look, we've we complete our trio of Edinburgh shows. Alun, you're staying.
I am. Yep, full run.
Can't get him away. He's going to stay up here until he gets a text from those comics.
Make yourself comfortable.
So, Gareth, thank you so much for doing the show.
Thanks for having me.
A joy to see you, and a massive happy birthday for tomorrow. What a biggie. 40. Wow. So that's brilliant. And we've had a great time up here, I think it's fair to say. If you're at the Edinburgh Festival, it's a joyous place. So we recommended some stuff today. Go and see that. Go and see Gareth. Go and see Alun. You can't see me. I'm sold out. So listen, if the good Lord spares us and the creeks don't rise, we'll be back again this time next week. Now get out.
This is Frank Skinner. This is
Absolute Radio.